If you went up to somebody and told them, hey, it'll take me like 5 seconds to hack your car, they wouldn't believe you. It doesn't seem real. We found the vulnerability where you type in a license plate, you get a live photo of that car. And then you can do things like unlock the car, start the engine, open the trunk, track the live location, view a year's worth of location history.
It's insane.
Cars are basically just connected computers, and those connected computers have a SIM card, which is used for communication. The connected vehicle data is so valuable to companies, employees do have access to that data, but often the employees will have access to more things than even you do.
I'm delighted to be chatting here today with Sam Curry, who is an independent security researcher, and he has blown the lid off car hacking and car vulnerabilities and car privacy nightmares. So welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
We've spoken previously about privacy nightmares in cars and surveillance that's going on, but in this interview, I wanted to focus on vulnerabilities and insecurities of cars. I think that a lot of people will drive around in their car thinking that it's pretty safe and there's no one on the outside who's able to tamper with it. But actually, it's not true. And the state of car security is actually pretty abysmal. To start off with, I want you to give me a story about how you got into all of this. You told me this before, and I just adore it. So, how did you get into car hacking?
I work as a security researcher. I do like a lot of cybersecurity work, but a couple friends and I had decided we're going to spend a few weeks just disconnected from computers. And we decided to go on this big long road trip to Washington, D.C. to visit like a few of my friends at university. But once we get there, we see these scooters just all around campus, and you have to like unlock it with an app, and it's like very interesting, right? So in the middle of the night, we took a few of these scooters up to the dorm room, and they're like yelling at us that we shouldn't be moving them. But once we get into the dorm room, we kind of try to figure out like how they work, right? So we proxied the mobile app, and we'd like kind of taken apart the scooter a little bit, and we're playing with it. And then all of a sudden we realized that the request we sent was actually activating every alarm on every scooter on campus. So in kind of like a movie moment, we like go out on the balcony, we open the doors, and just every scooter is just echoing across this big college campus. And it felt really cool, right? And after we did that, we're like, wow, that was like really fun, And we started to realize like cars are basically the same thing, and we thought like, why don't we just like look at car security? So a few of us, the people who were there, and then some other people, we kind of collaborated together, and we spent the next few months just trying to hack as many car companies as we could, and we were really successful. I think at the end of the day, we found vulnerabilities on probably, I don't know, like Nissan, Hyundai, Kia, Acura, basically probably like 60 to 70% of OEMs. The core of the vulnerability was really simple. It's like you type in someone's license plate, it resolves to their VIN number, and then you can use that to do things like unlock their car, locate their car, and sometimes even retrieve their like billing information for their vehicle.
And sometimes turn on cameras and things. You've done some research where you can just kind of tap into people's car cameras.
Yeah, that one's really scary too, because like a lot of the newer model Kias, they have this like 360-degree camera. And sometimes I think it's even like in the interior of the car. And we found the vulnerability where you type in a license plate, you get like a live photo of that car.
It's insane. It's insane, especially considering that, our cars' cameras see everywhere we go, everyone that we meet, like where we live. It's looking inside our home garage or our home street. It's a very personal thing. And the fact that someone can just type in a license plate, which is a public identifier, and retrieve this information is terrifying.
Right. It almost doesn't feel real. We had to kind of take steps when we report these vulnerabilities to companies to demonstrate like, yes, like this is how simple it is. Like all you do is you type in a license plate, resolve to the VIN number, and then you can just execute these vulnerabilities. If you went up to somebody and told them like, hey, it'll take me like 5 seconds to hack your car, just your license plate, they wouldn't believe you. Like it doesn't seem real.
It's like, sure, you've watched Hackers too many times,
Right.
So, when you first started doing this research, I'm sure you presumed that someone else was already taking care of the security of cars because you guys are this ragtag group of fun friends on a road trip who were just like, let's hack into things. But, someone else's, there's probably some big security firm that's making sure that something we're driving down the freeway at 80 miles per hour is actually safe. And it turns out that when you start diving into the privacy world, the security world, basically any area where we presume someone else is like looking out for us, someone else is doing the digging, it turns out they're not. And we all kind of need to step up and start doing it ourselves.
Yeah, really. And like more often than not, that'll happen where you think like, oh, surely somebody's, looked at this before and it's as secure as it could be. Why would I even check it? When you deep dive into it yourself, you realize that like it's not as secure as you think it'd be.
Why do you think it is that these things are not as secure as they should be?
Yeah, it's a really tricky question to say because there's so many different like industries that have like their own approaches to security. And some people, for instance, like maybe the car industry is less willing to work with like security researchers, for instance, because if somebody does find a vulnerability and like let's say a model of car that's already been rolled out, they're going to have to do a recall because a lot of times that it's very tricky to actually fix that. Some vulnerabilities you can fix with like these remote software updates, but if you do find a vulnerability that like let's say that there's a receiver on the car where you can spam a request to it and it'll delay the actual functionality of the vehicle. Like that sometimes isn't fixable via software update. So I don't know. In my experience, a lot of car companies aren't super willing to work with researchers.
That seems like a really bad precedent. They should be working with security researchers because it seems like their security tactic right now is, well, let's hope no one finds it. And if we let security researchers in, they might find it. Therefore, we're not going to let anyone in.
Yeah, there was the really famous Jeep hack, which I'm sure everybody's read about, where researchers were able to remotely basically compromise a Jeep and then steer the vehicle, turn off braking, things like that. And I think that really kicked off this internal thing with vehicle companies where they say, we need to secure the hardware as best we can, where this shouldn't be possible. But there's still like a million other gaps. Like at the end of the day, a car is just a computer connected to the internet via telecommunication protocol or whatever, right? So, there's a million different ways to approach it.
Let's also talk about the types of things that you can generally hack into in a car, because we all have these apps with modern cars these days that allow you to log into your cameras and to geolocate it and to, turn on the air conditioning and whatever else you want to do. Should we presume that anything that we can do remotely, someone else can probably do remotely as well?
Yeah, so not only do you assume that the car companies themselves have access to the same things that you have access to, but often the employees will have access to more things than even you do. So for instance, we found this vulnerability in Subaru recently where there's this global administrator portal for like the United States, Canada, Japan, and employees, like your everyday dealership employees and also people who work for Subaru, they're able to log into this panel and then type in your VIN number or your last name and your zip code or your email address or your phone number and then pull up what vehicles you have. And then some of the functionality on the website, it allows you to retrieve like the last year of location history every time the engine is started. That's not something that's offered to users in the app, but like employees do have access to that data. So you kind of have to assume that there's like even a bigger, broader, risk than what you're seeing in your app.
What can the rationale be behind allowing employees at a car dealership to access location data of someone from the past year? That's insane.
Right, like, and that was the thing I was really curious about because it's like, I get maybe if there's like a really, really locked down functionality where they can retrieve the current location of the vehicle, for instance, like law enforcement, things like that. But to have this built into an administrative UI, which is like super easy accessible, where you say, I want dates from 90 days of the last like 3 months and just retrieve every single exact coordinate. And it's precise to maybe 2 or 3 meters as well. It kind of begs the question, like, why do they have access to this? And the second thing I'd say there is that cars are really interesting because if I live in Omaha, Nebraska in the United States, and there's somebody in New York who comes to sell a car, as a dealership employee, I should technically be able to search for that VIN number. So it's really hard to like isolate it where it's like, okay, only the Omaha employees have access to the Omaha cars because it's very like intertwined.
Let's zoom out a little bit because we have all of this functionality in cars right now where I might sign up for a service where I pay a monthly fee and I can now you start my car remotely in order to get the heater going in winter, and that's something that now car companies have started to do a pay for use type thing. You have to pay a monthly fee, which again is kind of a little bit crazy to me. But then let's say that, I sell my car or I buy a second-hand car. Like, I don't know what kind of surveillance, what kind of tooling these previous owners have signed up with. And all of those different services might be provisioned by different providers. One of them might be like some car phone satellite company. One of them might be some, Subaru itself or whoever the car manufacturer is. There are like countless entities who are provisioning the different software inside a single vehicle. And so what kind of mechanism is there for changing over ownership, so that maybe I signed a form that says, yes, I agree to have everything spied on. But when I sell my car, that next person doesn't necessarily know all of the vulnerabilities that they're taking on when they buy their used vehicle. And so I just feel like the vulnerabilities just explode when you're buying modern day cars, because there are so many access points. The users are not in control. They don't even know, they're not even aware most of the time of the different things that someone else might have signed up for in their car. And if each of these things is potentially vulnerable because the company itself isn't paying enough attention to security, which is seems like that is the case, then that's a really big problem.
Right. And I totally agree. And I even had the experience too where I bought a used car and the previous owner had never cleared their stuff. So I was able to go into their account and I could just open their garage using the remote garage thing. There's tons of data on like what they were doing, what they're listening to. And I think everybody has experience where you go get a rental car and then you pull up the Bluetooth and it's just like 100 different devices. A lot of times it'll import text messages and it's like, okay, if a hacker did like rip out the actual module on the car, could they extract all these text messages? And it gets really, really complicated. The changeover process from like previous owner to like new owner is really vague and a lot of times it's never really followed, you know. If I want to sell my car, I want to sell my car. I'm going to take it to a dealership, give it to the people, and then hopefully they'll do something with it. But most of the time, or a lot of time, in my experience, they don't actually clear your data off that vehicle. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of like inherent risks and like, you know, giving your car away. It's basically like if I just gave somebody my laptop, right? Like it's the same kind of issue.
Absolutely. And I also think that because of a lot of this stuff going on is very opaque, and as you said, they're not allowing security researchers in to dig into this stuff, we're not really aware of the vulnerabilities and we're not pushing back. Because I think that when I sell my car, there should be a button that says disconnect me from all signed up services, erase all my data, take my data out of your databases. And somewhere in the vehicle it would talk to those thousands of entities provisioning all the different parts of my vehicle and eliminate that data. But that stuff doesn't exist. Instead, you have these processes that just kind of take on this zombie form where they will just kind of keep going, even though the car might change hands multiple times.
100%. And I think too as well, like in Europe, it's a little bit better where there's GDPR and actual compliance. So I've seen like a lot of opt-out forms for European vehicle and European vehicle sales, but I haven't really seen it incorporated on like a dealership level where like
Mm.
the car dealers themselves have to like be adherent to like some set of rules to, you know, handle this data because it should technically be the same like kind of data protections that normal consumers have. If I were to register with my email and password on some like credit bureau website, it's interesting, you know, but definitely like a gold mine for an attacker.
Can you walk me through the nitty gritty of some of these attacks that you have personally performed on different types of cars?
Cars are basically just connected computers, and those connected computers have a SIM card, which is used for communication. But the car itself has like this kind of authorization model where it'll grant specific people access to the vehicle. Like let's say you're samwcurry@gmail.com. The car communicates with an API that validates that user should have access, right? But these systems get really, really distributed where maybe it's one vehicle, but that one vehicle is connected to a customer facing system, an administrative facing system, and then maybe its data is being sent to like an insurance company. So there's all these different places that technically can talk to the vehicle, right? So as long as you compromise one of those places, it'll typically give you access, unrestricted access to not only that vehicle, but every other vehicle in that ecosystem. So we've compromised a lot of like public facing user stuff, like as a customer, like let's say the mobile app that you'd like log into, where you say, hey, you know, I'm Sandoval Curry, I log in, and then boom, I have access to the cars. We found vulnerabilities to compromise the account, to compromise the vehicles, to just send commands to vehicles without being authenticated at all. But on the same side, there's this whole administrative side. So, you know, if a dealership employee gets a phone call where a user's like, hey, you know, I'm having trouble starting my engine remotely, they'll able to be or they'll be able to just type in that VIN number in the vehicle or license plate and then do the same things where it's like a debug thing where it's like, where's the car at now? Can I remotely start this car and all this stuff? And we've also found vulnerabilities in the administrative side where just like fully compromising these admin sites and then getting like global access to vehicles where it's again like multiple countries, all the vehicles in the country. The connected vehicle data is so valuable to companies that even though they offer it at like let's say $7.99 a month, typically they'll just give you it for free because they want that data because it's really, really valuable to them. So more often than not, if you're buying a new car and you say like no, you know, no connected services, they'll typically say, well, we'll just give you a 90-day demo. And then that vehicle is automatically connected to that service and the data is being sent.
Like, walk me through specific brands. Just a preface. So, you guys are constantly diving into this. There are probably a lot of brands that you can't talk about. And so I think everyone should take away from this that this is an endemic problem. This is across the infrastructure of how cars are built. And so you shouldn't just take this as an indictment of specific brands. This is a problem with the car industry right now that needs to be fixed.
One example I'll give now, because we're releasing the research soon, it's like the latest finding we have. It's a vulnerability in Subaru where, again, it's like taking that license plate, plugging it in, and then you can remotely take over the account or like add yourself to the vehicle. So you can do things like unlock the car, start the engine, open the trunk, and then also like track the live location, view a year's worth of location history. The most scandalous thing for the Subaru hack, it was actually kind of funny. I bought my mom a Subaru like a few years ago on the promise that like she'd let me hack it one day, right? So the
Well,
reason we
a
were
lovely
looking,
relationship you guys have. Delightful.
definitely, I would take the deal if I were her. But
Yeah.
what ended up happening was like we were visiting for like Thanksgiving, and I was like, "Mom, now's the time. Can I like go mess with your car?" She's like, "Okay, fine." So I sneak away during dinner, but we found that basically there's a vulnerability on like the Subaru administration site, which is connected to like all Subarus in the United States, Canada, and Japan. And I'd found an issue that allowed me to access basically like a full administrator account. And then through that, you could do things like retrieve like the last year of location, assign yourself to the car, view billing information, view all this stuff about the account owner, right? And the scariest part to me, I think the most scandalous is I pulled like a year of my mom's location history and I put it on a map. And on this map, it's everywhere she's been, every single time the engine has started. So I could see where her
Wow.
doctor's office was, where her friends lived, where she would park. Like there was a specific church she would go to, and she would always park in the same parking spot. So I asked her, I was like, "Do you park in the same parking spot?" And she's like, "Yeah, I do." So it was that precise that you
Oh
could
my
tell
God.
exactly. It does get a little like tricky and scandalous because it's like, maybe they're like cheating on their girlfriend or something, or maybe there's like they're going to a different religious thing that they're not supposed to, and just all these privacy implications, right? So that one is like really kind of scary to me.
So if I ever buy a new car, I should immediately just call you up and say, Sam, can you hack it? I want to know what all the vulnerabilities are and I want them to patch it.
100%. I'd be keen, if you've got like a Lamborghini or something. We haven't looked at those yet. So something like that,
Yeah, all of my Lambos that I have. Yeah.
of course.
All right. So, and then talk to me about some specifics from the Kia, because that was big news that came out end of last year.
For that one, it's the same thing where it's like we built at the end of the day a proof of concept where you type in a license plate number and then it gives you full access to their account, the live location, the ability to send remote commands like unlock, lock, start, things like that. And then also it allows you to take photos with the vehicle. When we were testing it, yeah, one of the vehicles we pulled up was actually still at like the lot where they actually build the cars. Like it was just fresh off the production. And we sent a command to take a full 360 photo, and it's just like the inside of this Kia lot, right? Next to like a million other cars. So you're like, even right out of the box, it's like vulnerable, right? And that one was fun because like we got to actually record a proof of concept where, we'd rented a car off like Turo in Denver, Colorado. And then some friends and I recorded a video where it's like we go up to the car, type in the license plate number, and then just make it start honking.
Oh my gosh. What are the terms and conditions of you being allowed to do that?
We did have a chat with like the owner through the Turo app. We said, hey, we're like vehicle research people. We're gonna do some like non-invasive stuff if that's okay. And I think they were a little cautious and weird about it, but all worked out. So
Yeah, it all worked out, and you were able to do this massive press release to warn people and get the issue fixed.
right. There's often just very trivial application security vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities like, a programmer mistakenly forgot to add authorization to an endpoint. Very simple, trivial things like that, which you'd see like 5, 6, maybe even like 10 years ago that people would program into these applications. But we'll find those, we'll exploit them, we'll build a proof of concept where we're like, hey, we took over this VIN number and we unlocked the car. And then we'll report it and then work with them to get it patched. More often than not, like Subaru specifically, we had a really, really good time working with them. They responded immediately, they wanted it fixed. But like you said, it's endemic and it's across all these different car companies. Like going far back, maybe even like 5 years ago, I had actually found the vulnerability in Tesla just driving along the road and a rock had hit my windshield. But to give a little bit of a preface, I named my vehicle in the car what's called a blind XSS payload. So the car will ask you like, "Whoa, do you want to name your car like Sally or Bob or whatever?" But instead, I put in this like string, which it's a thing like hackers will use basically to try to execute arbitrary JavaScript and HTML in the context of like an employee, right? So I put this in here, and then a rock broke my windshield. So I was like, oh crap, I'll file a support ticket. So I went ahead and filed it. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting all these pingbacks where an administrator on Tesla's internal network had loaded my malicious payload, which would have allowed me to access like any vehicle on the Tesla network.
Did that lead to you being able to get into their system? Was this a vulnerability you let them know about? What would the consequences of that access have led to?
Tesla has a bug bounty program, so luckily everything I did was like authorized, and we reported the vulnerability. And I think they paid like a bounty of like $10,000, which for me at the time was huge. Like that's huge. But what was really cool is that Tesla's internal system, I think it was called like Toolbox or Garage.Toolbox, it allows you to basically retrieve the SSH keys for the vehicle. So you could have basically found like any vehicle in Tesla's network, retrieve those SSH keys, and then been able to like access other people's cars. And that level of access gets really, really scary really, really quickly because you can do things to those cars like send updates and like modify things. And on a worst scale like scenario, we never actually proved this, but I think it would have technically been possible for an attacker to overwrite specific like configurations or settings that could have potentially affected driving.
That gets scary. I want to dive into that for a little bit because right now we have governments talking about mandating kill switches in vehicles now. But to me, that just seems like one more potentially vulnerable endpoint that could be compromised.
Maybe the consumer-facing cars like Toyota, Hyundai, whatever, don't actually have these kill switches, but a lot of like industrial trucks do have these switches. And we did find the vulnerability where millions of vehicles, we could actually go in and send arbitrary commands to this module inside the car, which would communicate things with like the starter. So for instance, in probably like over 100,000 cars at least, we could just remotely disable the starter of the vehicle. And then you could additionally send like a follow-up command to just completely brick the device inside the truck. So, like, imagine this attack, right? You have the United States, you have all these cars that are just connected trucks, right? We could have gone in, remotely disabled the starters, and then just completely broken the device inside the car. So somebody has to manually fix all the starters of these cars. And you could have just done this over a period of a few hours, right? And that's like a scary, like, you could shut down the shipping industry for a day, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting.
Are you allowed to tell me which brands of trucks and cars you found this vulnerability in?
Yeah, so the vulnerability was in this big company called Spirion, and Spirion has like all these different connected vehicle solutions. For instance, they do like fleet management for police and like ambulances and things like that. But then they also do like truck management where it's like you can remotely see like the commands being executed inside the truck. For instance, like gas pedal accelerate or like find the exact location. So we found a vulnerability which was in like the top level administrator site for Spirion, which let us execute arbitrary commands on any of their vehicles within their whole fleet. So it turned out to be like millions of vehicles.
Holy moly, that's insane. And so you reported that and they fixed it. So that's one less vulnerability in the world, but you guys aren't checking every single car brand out there. So no doubt there are probably similar vulnerabilities.
Right. And we're kind of pushing for a future where it's like, hey, these admin applications should be VPN'd. Like you should be protecting them with like kind of just industry grade stuff where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, use standard practices and stuff, right? Like a lot of the vulnerabilities we found and like a lot of the like administrative interfaces, it's like it would be completely unexploitable had it been behind like a VPN, right? So there are big swaths of changes that you could do that haven't been done yet that I'd hope to see in the future.
Why would this have been helped by using a VPN?
When I say VPN, I mean like kind of a employee-sided VPN. So just a configuration where they have like an internal network and then like a simple, gateway for employees to like go and authenticate. As an attacker, you can talk like directly to the admin panel without the VPN. But if
Hmm.
they put it behind a VPN, you have to find the vulnerability in that middle part or bypass the authentication. Most other companies, they'll put their very sensitive internal applications behind VPNs. And even if it's not like fully secure at an application security perspective, it's at the very least stopping 99% of attackers.
It begs the question, why is there so little regard for security of consumers? Is it because that they think we're all dumb and we're never going to figure this out and so they could save costs by not paying attention to it? Because that sort of thing, like securing the access to really powerful tools that can remotely control people's cars, you would want to put effort in that if you cared about your consumers. But it seems that so many companies seem to be cutting corners there.
The car industry is unique in the sense I think that there's a lot of like particular cost savings. So it really isn't the fault of the security team of these companies. Maybe it's a fault on the budget they're allocated with.
Mm.
But, if management says like, we could save $1.50 per car if we just kind of like use this module and not this module, which is maybe a little bit more secure, they'll do that. What I think the US government and a lot of other countries are starting to do is really put pressure on these car companies to say, hey, if you're not securing this data, we're going to fine you a lot of money. And worse than that, like we'll impose other restrictions, right? And I think once that pressure is applied, there's a lot more actual progress.
I hear that story across the security space where it's, the security teams working extra hard and they're finding these vulnerabilities. They're saying, hey, we need to protect this, but ultimately there are budgetary concerns and management is really thinking of everything in terms of a cost benefit analysis. And so I think you're right, bringing this conversation back to, okay, there's potential liability to you and the cost of that would be astronomical. Therefore, adding just a couple of dollars here or there is actually going to be in your best interest. Actually bringing that conversation to the fore, I think, is super important. And so research like this that can expose how people can manipulate this and what kind of damages this could cause and how much money it would cost to, potentially fix these damages after the fact. I think it's so important that we start to have more of these conversations.
100% agree.
You talked before about Tesla because we were chatting about how secure different car companies were, and everyone immediately goes to Tesla. I think it's like the favorite to hate or the favorite to love. It depends on who you are, because it really brought electric vehicles into the consumer mind space. And so we kind of think, oh, well, they're connecting to everything. And so, like, let's understand how insecure they were. But I think we need to kind of reframe it and realize that all of our cars are just computers on wheels. There's nothing special about Tesla that they're doing that makes it more or less connected. Like, all of these cars are way more connected than we realize. And you found in previous research that actually Tesla was more secure, but you found an interesting, like, that didn't deter you. You were like, all right, well, we're going to try even harder. We're going to break into this. And you found like an interesting portal that was kind of endemic to the entire IoT space.
I'd found that vulnerability in Tesla a long time ago. And when we revisit after hacking the scooters, we're like, okay, how are we going to hack Tesla again? Because it's been 4 years. They're a lot more secure. They put in a lot of effort. And yeah, they are one of the more like harder to hack car companies. So we took a step back. We kind of thought about it and we're like, well, each one of the Teslas has these SIM cards that's provisioned. They buy like, if you're Tesla, you buy like SIM cards in bulk from AT&T, from Verizon, from all these companies. And then we realized that like every car company is buying these SIM cards in bulk. So we thought like, why don't we just pretend to be a consumer? So I made like this business account to register like the AT&T business site. And I said like, oh, I'm interested in buying SIM cards as like a car company or whatever. And so then I bought my like one SIM card from them and they shipped it to my house and I activated it. And then I got access to this portal, which was like, business.att.com. And I found that there was this vulnerability on the site which actually leaked this key for an application called Jasper. Jasper is basically this huge portal for tenants like Tesla or Rivian to manage all their SIM cards, right? But we got access to like the God key essentially for all of AT&T business. So for every AT&T business customer, and that goes for, even like three-letter organizations like the FBI to actual like companies, like Tesla, Rivian, you could basically see every SIM card they had there. You could access view message history. So any like text message they've sent that's not like encrypted, or you could even like resend to new SMSs. And then other things you could also do is like locating the SIM. So if you wanted to like triangulate exactly where the SIM is, or for instance, if you wanted to just completely remove that SIM, like shut it down. Now, without, touching Tesla's infrastructure whatsoever, you can go to this like third-party thing that they use SIM cards for and just say, hey, for the VIN number this, I want to just completely axe that SIM card. And then, while I'm driving my Tesla, all the data's cut, no more map, no more data, can't stream music, just turns off, right? Not like the car turns off, but the data does.
Well, if it's self-driving, how would that affect, if you're not getting an internet connection?
You're not getting updates. You're not getting, if there's, for instance, like a mission critical update, you're not going to get that mission critical update. So say there's some safety issue at that point, it like cuts it off. I think you'll still get like your self-driving on whatever the latest release is, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be able to like broadcast like, maybe you had like a near miss with a semi truck. That data is typically broadcast to Tesla. It won't actually broadcast that data.
Join the dots for me on Jasper because it seems like a really important company that no one has heard of.
Jasper was this product that was acquired by Cisco, and then all the different telecommunications companies will use it. All across the world, they use this product called Jasper. And it's basically just like really, really good at bulk SIM card management.
And so it isn't a SIM card provisioner, it is simply a tool for managing bulk SIM cards. So, like, what kind of things could you do? Just like turn things on and off at will, like, as you said, geolocate. It's just kind of like a porthole that gives you a dashboard with different ways to interact with every SIM card.
Exactly. And you can do things like read SMS history and like send SMS. So say for instance there's like
Mm.
an IoT device, that it's like a remote alarm system where you can like view the history of the item or whatever. It's interesting. There's a million different things from like cameras to, like tracking devices used by like police forces and things like that. Any business sense you could think of.
Wait, so when we have IoT devices that have SIM cards, I mean, we know that that's for data, but is it possible that these could be sending messages and like sending all kinds of things, and then if someone gets access to the Jasper portal, they can kind of see all the stuff that this IoT device is sending out from our homes?
Yeah, you could definitely do that. It's kind of like the joke where somebody on Twitter is like, "Why is my toaster sending like 4 gigs of data to like Iran or something?" Like it's a funny conversation.
We laugh because otherwise we'd cry. Okay.
Fair.
So yeah, I think that this Jasper thing is interesting because there are so many of these giant corporations that are very faceless. They're not something that consumers interface with. And so our attention, we just don't know they exist. So we don't know to pay attention to them. Why is every SIM card basically managed by this one provider? Is there not competition in the marketplace where you could use different ones and choose the one with the best security and privacy benefits? Like it's always interesting when suddenly you find out about one of these giant companies, you realize that they kind of have a stranglehold over everyone, and you wonder how we got there and why no one's talking about it.
Yeah, well, I think like ISPs and like telecoms don't really have a good history of not being monopolies. When you really dissect it, they're all using the same providers for everything, right? And like you said, there are actually competitors. I was at the CES or like consumer something show, consumer economics show, I don't remember,
Mm-hmm.
but CES. And I was walking by and I saw one of the booths and there's actually a competitor at Jasper. So I think they do exist, but they're probably not partnered with like the big Goliaths like AT&T.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And so you weren't able to hack Tesla in that instance, but you were able to hack into Jasper. And did you then send your report to Jasper and say, "Hey, we have your system are owned by us"?
Pretty much. Yeah, we sent it to AT&T because we were leaking like specifically that AT&T key. So we're just like, hey, AT&T, we found this key. It's very bad. And then they fixed it. So it was cool.
Was that a Jasper issue? Or was that an AT&T issue?
In this specific case, it was an AT&T issue. Had like we found a core vulnerability in the actual Jasper application,
Mm-hmm.
then I think it would have been something we'd report to Jasper.
Makes me lose my breath a little bit when I think about like a single company provisioning a whole lot of Goliath companies. If you just kind of go up the tree and it all stems from this one company, that's a giant target right there. That seems like that would be a big target for hackers to be focused on in order to find vulnerabilities. It makes me a little nervous when things are centralized in that way because it does make it more attractive to people who want to break in and use that information adversarially, and it makes me worried about consumers.
I totally agree. And I think a lot of the research we do, instead of like trying to hack a particular company, a lot of times we'll just ask like, what is our goal of the research? And then like, what can we find like the highest level up that we could compromise to do that thing?
Hmm.
So to give you an example, we wanted to hack Tether, which is this huge cryptocurrency. It's like,
You tried to hack Tether.
yeah, we really wanted to hack Tether, and we looked at what Tether's website, and we saw it was hosted on tether.to. And the TOTLD is actually part of this island called Tonga. It turns out that like way back when in San Francisco, these two guys decided to start what was probably the first TLD, which was actually .to. So they built this kind of like really old website, which was like a Perl script. It was like a single Perl script. And then it kept going and like people use the domain all the time, .to, until eventually like there's millions of websites on the .to. So we wanted to hack Tether, which is tether.to. So instead, we found a vulnerability in the actual .to TLD, and then we were able to compromise like every website under that TLD. So we got into contact with Tether. We said like, hey, we found this vulnerability in .to, except like we think it impacts you guys, and like we'd like to use you as like a liaison to talk to the .to people. And eventually they fixed it, and good things happened, and now the vulnerability is resolved. But you know, back to your point, right? It's like instead of like trying to find like some specific application security vulnerability, why not compromise this? And then you can update the DNS on like, the API, and then you can steal tokens and then compromise accounts, right? It's really, really fascinating.
When we start talking about, well, let's just put a centralized backdoor in this and let's just centrally control this thing here, I just get really worried about that sort of stuff because it, as you said, it just gives us more targets to focus on. And digital things are really hard to secure. It's really hard. A hacker only needs to be right once, but we need to be right every single time. And so I think that centralizing all this into a single vulnerability, it just gets to a really dangerous situation. And we should maybe push back on those kind of centralization efforts.
For my day job, I work as a security consultant and I work from my home network most of the time. And I was trying to exploit this vulnerability, which required that I spin up like an HTTP server where this website could reach out to my home network just to see that this external thing had like remote connection, right? So the simple thing is I basically just like opened something on my network that this website could talk to if it was vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after spinning up this web server and like logging all the traffic that was being sent to it, I curled it from my own network and I saw that it was live just to make sure. But then, like 10, 20 seconds later, the HTTP request that I sent to my own network was resent by a random IP address. So some random IP was intercepting and replaying my traffic. So I was like, oh my God, like, did my computer get hacked? So then I pulled out my phone and then I opened the same URL and I waited for like a minute. And the exact same thing happened where my traffic was being intercepted and replayed by this random IP address. But what turned out had happened was like my whole router had been compromised. And
Wow.
yeah, and I was really curious like how this had happened. So, you know, being curious about it, I thought about it as like, hey, what services are running on my modem that like an attacker could compromise? And what I realized is that there's this protocol called TR69, which basically allows the ISP to send arbitrary commands to my device. So I looked into it and I found the vulnerability, which would have allowed me to basically send arbitrary commands to like millions of devices, like every other router in my ISP. We got the vulnerability resolved. The team worked with me really closely, but it kind of begs the question. It's like, even your modem in your house, like it's not yours. Like you don't have full control of it. Like if you don't configure it correctly, like the ISP can just hack it if they want to.
How can someone even tell if their router has been compromised?
It's really tricky, because it does get very like particular. But one thing I would say, at least to prevent it, is to install an OS like OpenWRT on your router. The actual software that runs on your ISP issued modem is essentially backdoored, So using an open source alternative like OpenWRT will fix a lot of those issues that are out of the box.
Wow. And so when I suggest to people use like pfSense or OpenSense or whatever, that's not just like some janky thing that gives you more granular control. That's something that actually could pave over some of these back doors that are put into our routers by default.
Right, 100%. It will fix those problems.
There's a lot of routers that ship and they have known vulnerabilities and they're not patched, and patching with routers is pretty abysmal. But actually, it's worse than that because there are back doors that have been deliberately put in our routers to allow the ISP to, as you said, communicate with hundreds of thousands of routers. And so, I mean, that seems like a giant vulnerability, like in itself. It's not even waiting to happen. Like that's the vulnerability is that ISP is just able to, to communicate with your router and send you things, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. It is kind of terrifying too, because like even beyond that, sometimes there'll be like a third-party software that the ISPs will use to like, let's say, you want to have a mobile app to manage your router. A lot of times, multiple different ISPs will use that same provider. And then if you compromise that single provider, it allows the exact same thing, but across multiple ISPs. So yeah, same concept where it's just like one big thing, you compromise it, and then it's just everything.
So is car hacking your main focus these days? Because it sounds like you're doing, stable coins and ISPs and like all kinds of things.
I got pulled into the car hacking rabbit hole a bit. It's just really, really fun. There's something really cool about the idea that like I drive around Omaha, Nebraska a lot, and there's just like hundreds of random cars, and it's just kind of cool to think like I can compromise like that specific computer.
Have you seen compromises that would allow you to like take over remote driving? Now that we have the ability to have cars drive themselves, what's actually happening is, it's relying on software in order to drive for you. Software can be infiltrated. It's probably getting live updates all the time as well. Like, have you actually found an exploit like that yet?
No, the actual switching from kind of the work we do where it's like privacy compromises and like
Hmm.
being able to like remotely start it and then pivoting into the actual internals where it's like arbitrary can commands, that's like probably like a year of research. So for the people who've done that in the past, for instance, like the GPAC, I
Hmm.
think like huge props to them because they decided like, they're going to one, find like an initial vector, and then two, they're going to go so deep that they can do this, right? But I think hypothetically, it's definitely doable. For instance, Tesla had a button you'd press in your mobile app to like call your car to you, right?
Hmm.
So just there, if you compromise somebody's Tesla account, you could technically move their car, right? So then, yeah, so I think technically it is very possible.
I have a question. It's purely self-centered because someone in my members chat asked me this the other day. And I was like, I have no idea, but Sam probably knows. So they have a Tesla, and suddenly they got a pop-up on their map that was recommending a location to them. And they were like, wait, this is weird. Like Tesla doesn't, randomly recommend locations. How was this sent? Was this like a nearby Bluetooth device that has kind of intercepted, kind of like an airdrop type thing? Is this someone in our Tesla accounts? And so they went ahead and they changed their passwords, but then it happened again. And so, like, have you seen any vulnerabilities with that kind of access that can, make you show things on other people's screens, etc.? And like, well, if you were to guess, and maybe we'll cut this part out because I'm truly only asking for to help my friend in the chat.
Yeah, we've definitely seen vulnerabilities where like an attacker could present pop-ups on like a car screen where, for instance, it's a new map suggestion or like things like that. For Tesla in particular, it almost sounds like their account was compromised and somebody was just like messing with them by sending locations to the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think you can through the app like say like, hey, this Starbucks looks interesting and like send it as a point of interest. Um, the coolest one we had, I think, was like you could actually send police cars like recommended locations like as an operator. So we had vulnerability where you're essentially like the admin of a police fleet and you all these cars are driving around in these cities and like you can issue locations for these cars to go to, right? So it's definitely a thing.
Oh wow. And so it does seem like their account was compromised. Would that have been because they then reset it? Is that something that would have kicked them out? Or like what would someone need to do at that stage if they find their car has been compromised in such a way?
Yeah, I think logging in and out on the actual vehicle after you've changed your password and then like changed your email password as well,
Mm-hmm.
it varies a lot, but most of the time it's just like an individual account compromise, right? I think the coolest proof of concept is just some friends and I in a car and we just drive around, you're behind somebody in Starbucks and then you make their car start honking because it's such an absurd concept for them to be like, my car's honking. Why is my car honking? Like there's no chance they're gonna assume the car behind them has like hacked their vehicle, right? So it'd be fun to just kind of go mess with people, but we can't do that.
You guys are ethical hackers. You guys are white hats who are going in and making sure that things are safe. You're finding vulnerabilities. You're reporting them. You're protecting all of us, really. But the fact is that these vulnerabilities exist. We don't know who's taking advantage of them. We don't know who knows about these things as well and is using them. We don't know, how many other vulnerabilities you guys haven't discovered yet that people are actively taking advantage on. And so I think that it's important for people to realize this, and to kind of understand the extent to which our cars are really vulnerable.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I would be surprised if these vulnerabilities haven't been exploited against people like, like world leaders, or, if you're driving
Mm-hmm.
around like a Bentley and maybe there's a vulnerability in Bentley to like track and view the
Mm-hmm.
history. I think recently there was a case where somebody found a exposed bucket. I think it was like an S3 bucket on the internet with just a list of location history for like hundreds of thousands of cars, right? And then through that data, they had a few researchers who found like a politician in there. And they could see this politician was like going to specific places that were like weird, that didn't really align. So even for people like that, like there's a lot of like really sensitive data.
What can people do? Is there anything? Because all of our cars are connected these days. Everything is a computer. What are the solutions?
Right. I think the first thing is to kind of assess like your risk profile. If you are somebody who is at risk, like any whatsoever, completely disable the remote functionality because I think it's more dangerous than it is useful. So you can actually do this, a lot of the cars, if you kind of just bend some components back, you can Google tutorials for this, just disconnect the SIM or disconnect the telematic functionality. Because often like the only way you can really do it where it's completely removed is to actually unplug it.
Now, I'm presuming like these days, you probably won't find as many physical SIMs as you would just eSIMs. So, is there a way to physically detach the eSIM mechanism?
I've seen it in a couple like different vehicles. Granted, they're all like older. Like you said, like a lot of them now are eSIMs, you know. They're making it harder and harder and like more and more difficult to like manually opt out. But there should be ways where you can contact the car companies and just say, "Hey, I don't want any data whatsoever." And they should be able to completely like remotely shut it down for you.
And then you're sort of relying on them to actually remotely shut it down, knowing that they make a ton of money by keeping that functional, and there's no way for you to verify it. It gets pretty sticky, this territory.
It definitely does, yeah. Something happened, I think maybe like a little over a year ago, where I was like falsely accused of committing wire fraud and all these crimes,
Oh,
and
wow.
they'd actually obtained a warrant to subpoena my Google, my Apple, all of my data they subpoenaed. And like at that point, you realize like how much data that you actually have that like corresponds to like, maybe you're talking to somebody who's involved with something. They can use that data or whatever when they actually go through your stuff. And like
Mm-hmm.
they have all these like cross parallel investigations and like you do feel like responsible and like that you should maybe like keep better care of your data, right? Because even just being an iPhone user, like your location's monitored, like, and if there is a subpoena, they can retrieve that information, right? So like just being aware of like what devices you have that collect and share your information, I think is a good first step.
Yeah, I would say that there are big buckets that people can look at. So one of them obviously is your phone, and using something like Graphene OS is really going to be far better than something like Android and iOS. Your car is a huge repository of data. We're only just starting legally to figure out how to deal with this. I know that Utah has passed a law basically trying to plug up the car loophole for warrants. So in America, you need a warrant if you want to investigate someone, but if you think that there's something in someone's car, you can't really get a warrant for a car, because in a warrant, you have to specify exactly where to find something, and cars are on four wheels, so they can easily just move. And suddenly your warrant's not valid. So there's this car loophole that says you don't need a warrant for cars. You just need like a reasonable suspicion, which is why, people can get pulled over, their cars searched, and all of that. But cars aren't just physical entities anymore to be searched for physical things. They are repositories of our text messages, our photos, our location data, all of this information. So is that now accessible, like with some just like flimsy suspicion? And so what Utah has done is at least remove the location allowance. And so they've said, well, you can't access location data from cars. But we have a whole lot more plugging that we need to do as a society to make sure that we're not just handing over all of our information to countless entities and making ourselves more vulnerable. Like we really need to, as you said, start looking at our devices, what things are collecting information, and start taking actionable steps. And luckily, there are many actionable steps for a lot of these things that we can really start implementing.
Yep, 100%. A big thing I think that people forget a lot is that like their data is very, very valuable. It is what makes these like trillion-dollar companies and like it is what makes all these like car companies like so profitable is that like your specific little bits of data add up to this huge collective. And then once it's in that huge collective, it's very, very dangerous. If there's like any sort of like corruption or like malicious people who are trying to exploit it. But just like being kind of more particular about like where you're sharing your data, reading through the policies and like Googling like, hey, is Subaru better than like Toyota at data privacy? And if so, maybe it influences like my decision to switch. So just small things like that. But for the most part, I'm almost a little more like optimal, I guess, about the future. I'm hoping that like monetary stuff is pressuring these companies to kind of work better.
I do hope that we see an improvement in how they're treating our security and our privacy. I think that we only get there if we start being really vocal about it. When we go to a car dealership and we're about to spend 20, 30, $100,000, our voice matters. And so it's important that we ask questions about privacy, about security, that we hold these dealerships, to the fire. They're not going to have the answers because they've never been given a script that gives them any of this information. But if enough people ask, they're going to have to find out that information. They're going to have to ask dealerships. All of this has run on effects. And I think that just, globally, if we start making noise and say that this is something that we prioritize, companies will have to start falling in line. Otherwise, they will lose market share to the companies that are listening. So really important, we are more empowered than we realize, and just making noise actually goes a lot further than we realize.
Absolutely. And I don't think it ever should have gotten to a point where like Audi can remotely sell you a heated steering wheel that's already in the car. Like I think the whole right to repair movement and then like the privacy movement, I think it's starting to converge to like a boiling point where hopefully we've passed the main point.
Yeah, so where we actually have control over the vehicle that we purchased and we're not kind of being held hostage by these companies. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for chatting with me. This has been illuminating to say the least. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. You're really doing such a tremendous job helping people out there understand, but also protect themselves. So keep going and keep us updated with everything you find out.
Pleasure to speak as always.